Martial art films is a subgenre of action that has influenced it for decades, with bits of its history and legacy sprinkled all across all action movies. In about 3 minutes, I will briefly talk about its history and evolution over time as a genre. Quick warning, I'll be glossing over a lot of details and history just for the sake of time, and there's a lot of information that I gotta talk about simply due to the fact that there's a time limit, and even when we talk about this warning, there's a lot of limited time I have, so please keep that in mind. Japan, 1943. It's a spicy time in history for the world, especially for Japan, but a soon-to-be famous director, Akira Kurosawa, films the movie Sugata Sanshiro. The first martial arts film would bring the birth of a new subgenre. Sugata Sanshiro is a movie that revolves around judo, judo being the central point of the story and would heavily be featured throughout the movie, relative to other movies at the time. In the movie itself, there aren't a whole lot of fight scenes as you would expect, there still being a heavy focus on characters and dialogue. The camera barely moved and is almost entirely made up of stills with occasional camera pans and tracking shots, and a whole lot of wide shots. Other movies would follow this formula, with the majority of it being dialogue and an occasional fight. The fights were treated as lesson points of the story and more as a way to develop a character rather than telling a story through the fights. The 70s and the 90s is considered the golden age and is where many martial arts films and action movies take their inspiration from. Most of these movies being faster paced with the help of cinematography and editing. The camera moving more by emphasizing beats of a fight, following the fights by panning with the characters and objects used in the fight, attracting the eye of the viewer and bringing attention to specific beats. Quick inserts of fists and legs are also used to emphasize the importance of a hit. There would also be a lot less dialogue and a lot more fights, with also the themes of the movies even changing, coming from the more serious, intense fights to the more comedic approach, mostly popularly shown by Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan. Not saying there weren't any serious martial arts movies being made, Donnie Yen probably being one of the more recognizable faces that was doing those types of movies. Then we reached the late 90s to early 2000s, and the West would get a taste of what Hong Kong has been doing for decades and would try to replicate it with some success, but largely being considered a joke even compared to movies made 30 years prior.
Oh my god, oh hell no, man.
Cutting more frequently and barely visible fights do not make very good fight scenes. It did spawn some parodies like Kung Pao and also some gems like Kill Bill. Now we're at the present, where almost every action movie made has some form of martial arts in it and follows the old formula from the 70s and 80s, but with a modern twist. The advancement of camera technology and cinematic techniques would obviously bring a more modern feel to these fights and movies. John Wick, Ip Man, and Shang-Chi are examples of martial art films using the old formula but also bringing it to today's standard of cinematic quality. There's a lot of information that I skimmed over and didn't talk about, I just couldn't fit it in within 3 minutes. But I do hope this video does help you understand a super summarized history of martial art films.